time to get inspired and improve your yoga knowledge in English. You're listening to Your Yoga in English, a podcast for yogis and yoga teachers that speak English as their second or third language and want to practice or teach yoga worldwide. I'm Annie, the founder of Enga Unite, and here to guide you on the way to become the confident and knowledgeable English-speaking yogi you want to be. Yeah! There you are. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. Nice to meet you as well.
All right. Let me just quickly introduce the topic of today. Because this month we've been working on cleaning and cleansing the body a lot. 2 weeks ago, we already introduced Ayurveda. And I do want to get into more depth of it with you. Because you know a lot about it and probably know more about it than I do. But before we do that, let's introduce you. Let's find out where you're from, where you are now.
I'm Ann Pellegrini. And I have a school, Ashtanga Yoga Peru, and it's located in Miraflores, which is in Lima, Peru. And I'm Canadian. I was born and raised in Canada, and I've been living in Lima for 11 years now.
That's really, really interesting. How did you end up there?
For love and life. Yeah, I have 2 children, a daughter, she's 7, and a son, he's 5. And I just felt that living in Peru was a great way for me to deepen my spiritual journey, because I had been practicing yoga in Toronto, and then I moved to Miami and I started practicing in the Miami Life Center, which is an Ashtanga Yoga studio. And I then came to Peru and I went to India, and so I just felt like Peru had a lot of similarities to India because it has a lot of culture. It's very rich in culture. And I absolutely love it here. So it looks like I'm staying.
That's amazing. I've never visited, but I really, really love Central and South America. And Peru definitely is a big desire still. Amazing. And you said you practice Ashtanga Yoga. For the people that don't know what that is, could you explain maybe?
Ashtanga Yoga is a system. It's a method of different asanas that you practice. It's a dynamic practice. Each and every person practices on their own, but with the accompaniment of a teacher. It can be practiced by anyone and everyone, because you can do it slower, you can do it faster, and it really is the best way to learn advanced postures. Because the types of yoga that we're accustomed to are yoga where the teacher is in front and everyone is kind of following the teacher and looking up. Whereas Ashtanga Yoga, we use it's called Mysore style, because it's the southern city in India. It's like the Mecca of yoga, really. But it's where my teacher, Paramaguru Sharath, lives. He was born and raised there. So it's a great way just to introduce yoga, the Mysore method. And it's also a great way for advanced practitioners to deepen their practice.
Exactly, yes. And I think it's funny because, like you said, a lot of people practice either Hatha or Vinyasa. The first time I practiced Ashtanga, I was completely off. I'm like, what's happening? It depends on the class, like you said. You can practice it in your own speed or depending on your teacher or maybe your level.
Exactly.
But it's very different indeed. And then a little bit about your experience with learning languages, because we do like to interview people that speak more than one language, because many of us here are English learners. Now, you're from Canada, so you speak English already, but tell us a little bit more about other languages you speak.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was just telling, she's a Peruvian friend, but she lived most of her life in the United States. So we tend to speak in Spanglish. Like I can speak to her in Spanish or I can speak to her in English.
Mm-hmm.
But I was telling her actually just yesterday that when I speak English now, sometimes I feel like I forget which word to use, which it makes it interesting because, I've been living here for 11 years. When I moved here, I didn't know any Spanish. I speak fluently English and Spanish. Those are the only two languages that I can speak fluently. Growing up in Canada, I studied French. So I was, I don't think I was ever fluent in French. I studied it up until university. I knew a lot about the grammar, but I never practiced it. So living here, I went to school for a year and I took classes from Monday to Friday. I think they were an hour and a half every day. And then after a year, I just kept practicing because I had no other choice, really.
And what is it like where you live? Do people in general speak English or not so much?
No, everyone speaks Spanish. But depending on what high school you went to, or maybe you went to an institute to learn English, there are some people that do speak English because they learned it, like I said, in high school, or they went to a specific institute. But most people speak just Spanish.
Yeah, exactly. Nice, really nice. I know that maybe I didn't ask you this question before, but what is something that really helped you learn? Do you have a special technique that helped you memorize vocabulary or grammar rules?
I think the best, I'll give you an example. So I'm learning how to surf because here in Lima, there is really good surfing. The water's cold because it's the Pacific Ocean, so you have to wear a wetsuit. But the surfing is amazing. So I just started learning, and my surf teacher, he doesn't speak any English. He does know a little bit. He came for a class, and I told him that he was not allowed to speak any Spanish at all, only in English. So I think the best way is to immerse yourself. So I gave him homework. I said, when you watch movies, only watch them in English. Don't put the subtitles, even if you don't understand. You can understand because they're acting, and maybe you can kind of figure out what they're doing. I also told him to call 3 friends that only speak English, so he has to practice his English. So I think that's the best, is just to completely immerse yourself by watching movies or listening to podcasts or speaking to people who can't help you cheat because they don't understand. So in this case, if the people want to practice English, so the idea is for people to only speak with someone who only speaks in English and doesn't speak Spanish. So you're basically forced to use your English. And I think a lot of people are shy. They want it to be perfect or correct. But the idea is just to be able to communicate. And as long as the person understands you, that's fine. And the way to correct it is just by listening to movies or podcasts. And then you can start to correct yourself, or there's always people that maybe correct you.
Exactly. Those are great tips, absolutely. Immersing yourself, listening, watching things in the other language, and making mistakes while you're speaking to people and ask them to correct you is one of the best ways. Really, really good. So speaking about cleaning, cleansing, this month we've been speaking about it a lot. Maybe you've seen it as well. And the theme was trying to make everyone understand the difference between cleaning and cleansing. Now, cleaning is very often superficial, cleaning the body with water or taking a shower. And cleansing is more of a holistic experience. And this really aligns with the practices of Ayurveda. Could you give us a description of Ayurveda? What does this mean? What is this exactly?
So the difference between cleansing and cleaning, that was the question, according to Ayurveda?
Yes, according to Ayurveda, and what Ayurveda entails. What do we do with Ayurveda?
Well, Ayurveda is the sister science of yoga. So when rishis, who are like the fathers or the priests in that time, were sitting in their meditative states. So they were practicing some yama yoga. They were sitting and they were concentrating, which is dharana, so that they could meditate, which is dhyana, and so that they could experience samadhi. In this state, they created the whole science of Ayurveda, which is a science to live a long life and live in harmony and feel good and have a lot of energy, vitality. It's a science where we are preventing disease. So when they were in these states, they created Ayurveda. And the idea was that yoga and Ayurveda were always to be practiced together, right? So Ayurveda is just a way of life, really. And this way of life includes the practice of asana and the practice of meditation, of yoga. So the first thing when you asked me the question about cleansing, the difference between cleansing and cleaning, I thought of saucha. Okay, so Ashtanga Yoga, which is a method that I practice, but it's also related back to Patanjali. So if we look in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, we have the 8 limbs of yoga, which is Ashtau, which is 8, Tanga, the limbs or petals of yoga. So the second limb, which is niyama, the first part of that is saucha. Saucha is cleanliness. So when we're talking about cleanliness, yes, we can talk about taking a daily shower, brushing our teeth, but in terms of Ayurveda, we're also talking about the colon, because all disease, according to Ayurveda, starts in the colon. So we need to keep the colon healthy. By keeping the colon healthy, we need to eliminate everything that we've ingested. So this includes everything that we've eaten, but also we have to think of our mind. So if we think of saucha, cleanliness of the mind. So keeping the mind clean. So this includes being able to practice asana. Asana is meant, which is the third limb of Ashtanga Yoga. Asana is meant as a tool so that we can sit and concentrate and meditate, not as a tool, as an end of itself. So we use the posture so that we can eventually sit and concentrate and then hopefully be able to meditate. The first 4 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, the first 2 are the principios éticos, que son, you can think of them as the 10 commandments, right? So they're the yamas and niyamas. The first 2 are the most important. So the first one is ahimsa, which is non-violence. When you have the letter A in Sanskrit, it's not just something negative or passive, like such as non-violence, but what is the opposite of the root word? So the root word violence, what is the opposite? Love or transformation or being kind or appreciating. So how can we be more loving, more kind, more appreciative in our lives? And then the second limb, which is niyama, which we talked about, is saucha, is this cleanliness. Cleanliness of mind and body. How can we be more clean, more pure in body?
Exactly. It's really interesting. And I like that you brought up these points of, let's say, the principles of yoga or beliefs, morals that we want to live up to. We haven't really spoken about these before, so it's really interesting that they are mentioned now. But what does this have to do with Ayurveda? How do we connect these morals and beliefs to Ayurveda?
Okay, so what we need to do then is have a routine, a daily routine, which includes the practice of yoga, the practice of meditation, and it's all about the energy, what is natural. Okay, so let's talk about waking up in the morning. 1 hour and a half before sunrise is Brahma. Brahma is God, God's hour. Okay, so this is the best time to wake up. So here, for example, the sun is coming up at 6 a.m. more or less. So that means 4:30 a.m. My alarm rings. Well, I usually wake up at 3:30, 4 o'clock. So I can take a shower. I can hopefully eliminate and go to the bathroom and brush my teeth. And then I'm ready to start my yoga practice. Okay, so it's the easiest to practice at this time, to be able to meditate or to practice your spiritual practice, which is my Ashtanga Yoga practice, because the day is just beginning, and like I said, it's Brahma Muhurta, it's God's hour. So we can connect much easily. My kids are asleep, I don't have any classes at that time, it's dark, and it's just a really magical time. So I do this because I have class at 6 a.m. Depending on your dosha, everyone should wake up between 4:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. Whoever you are, you should awaken at this time, depending on your dosha. If you're Kapha, you should wake up at 4:30 a.m. If you're Pitta, 5 o'clock is okay. And if you're Vata, 6 a.m. Because what happens after 6 a.m. is tamas. Tamas is the principle of inertia, heaviness, lethargy. It also creates disease, and it also creates toxins. So if we wake up after 6 a.m., we carry this energy of tamas, which is this feeling of heaviness, throughout the whole day. I don't know if you've ever noticed, if you've gone to bed, let's say at 10 p.m. and you've woken up at 6 a.m., you just feel so good. But if you go to bed at 12 and you wake up at 7 or 8, you have slept 8 hours in those both examples. But the example where you woke up at 8 a.m. and you went to bed at midnight, you feel completely different. You feel very heavy. And this is the idea from Ayurveda, okay, the gunas. So we have tamas, which is heaviness, rajas, which is the activity, movement. Sometimes it's anger or desire. And then we have sattva, which is lucidity, which is equanimity, harmony. So sattva, we can experience this if we wake up early, we shower before practice, because practice is purifying the mind and the body. And so we want to be pure. We want to be clean before we practice. A lot of people look at yoga and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to exercise, so I'm going to shower after yoga. So I'd like to invite people to change that idea to shower before yoga, and then after you've practiced, let's say we've woken up at 6 a.m., you've practiced at 7 o'clock, you start preparing your breakfast, because you should be eating breakfast between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., which is early, and you should have 32 mouthfuls. This is the quantity. So if you're between 25 years old and 50 years old, that's for 32. If you're between 50 years old to 75 years old, it's 16 mouthfuls. It's less.
Yes. Significantly less. I've never known this before. No, never heard this. Very interesting.
And then at between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. is when you should have your lunch, which is also 32 mouthfuls. So the amount of food that you eat during lunch and during breakfast, it's the same amount. Okay. And then at dinner time should be between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. and it should only be 16. So it should be half of what you had for breakfast or half of what you had for lunch. And then going to bed should be 10 o'clock is the maximum. At 10 o'clock, you should already be asleep. So at 9 o'clock, you're already starting the ritual to go to sleep. The most beautiful part of this is that when you set your alarm, and even though it's really difficult to know, it's in the beginning, maybe if you're not a morning person, to wake up early, you're going to see that if you just keep doing it, you're automatically going to be asleep by 10 o'clock. If you wake up early every day, because you're just really tired. And if you wake up and you do yoga and you meditate, at 10 o'clock, you're already going to be asleep.
Exactly.
Because between 10 p.m. and 2 p.m. is Pitta time, which is fire and water. And these are the most important 4 hours of sleep. If you only sleep those 4 hours, you're good. You rejuvenate, you feel amazing. when you eat a heavy meal, for example, this is why we don't eat so heavy at nighttime, and then you go to sleep, your body, instead of rejuvenating itself, it's going to be focusing on digesting your food. And this is not good. And we're not going to get a good night's sleep if we eat a heavy meal in the evening. This is why breakfast and lunch should be the larger meals.
Exactly. Really nice.
I just wanted to say that I've been doing this routine for the last 12 years, I think, more or less. Pretty strict. But I have become a little bit more flexible, let's say on the weekends. Basically, I would say now Monday to Friday, I still keep the routine. And it just changes everything, especially having kids. I just feel like it just really goes really well with my family. And I just feel that I'm able to keep in shape, because a lot of people tend to carry weight because they eat really late or they wake up too late. And so when we practice yoga and we practice them according to the principles of Ayurveda, it's not like I'm trying to lose weight. It just naturally, it's part of nature. You just naturally become the way that you're supposed to be.
Exactly. I've got so many questions. I don't even know where to start anymore. So I wanted to ask you about the diaria, but you've kind of already explained what it is without giving it a name. I think one of the questions that a lot of people wonder is, how do we create our own? Because there are guidelines, there are simple ideas for you, but it also could depend on your dosha constitution, right? What's right and what's maybe wrong. Yeah, everyone, I want people to not be so focused on what their dosha is. Everyone has all three. Yeah. We have all of the elements inside of us. And so what we need to do is understand our dosha, but we also need to understand the other doshas, right? What we need to do is just focus on practicing yoga every day and building a routine where we're waking up and going to sleep at the same time every day, the best that we can, and that we're having breakfast and lunch at the same time every day, the best that we can, and amount of food. So that's just the easiest way to start your routine. So basically, between 4:30 a.m. and 6 a.m., you set your alarm, no matter what dosha you are. If you want to get into specifics, if you're Kapha, it's 4:30. If it's Pitta, it's 5. If it's Vata, it's 6 a.m. For example, Kapha people, it's very difficult for them to lose weight. If they wake up at 4:30 a.m. to have breakfast, at 7 a.m., because between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. is the time for breakfast. If you're Kapha, it's at 7 a.m. If you're Pitta, it's 7:30 a.m. If you're Vata, it's 8 a.m. Okay, so if you're able to then have breakfast at 7 a.m., and then you're supposed to have lunch at 1 p.m. because Kapha, you need more time between meals. Whereas Vata, your breakfast is at 8 a.m., but then your lunch is at 11 a.m. This helps ground Vata because Vata needs the grounding. So the food early in the morning, breakfast at 8 and lunch at 11, helps ground them, and then they can have the whole afternoon to flow and do whatever they need to do. To get carried away.
Exactly. Don't need to be so strict in the beginning at the times. I just think that's why I like to give that window. 4:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. is wake up. 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. is breakfast. And then 11 to 1 is lunch. Everyone's asleep by 10. By 10 o'clock, everyone should be sleeping. When you wake up is to bathe, right? To bathe and then do yoga, meditation, and then have your breakfast. That's the order. And also the portions. So 32 mouthfuls breakfast, 32 mouthfuls during lunch, and 16 mouthfuls during supper. If you just start with that and follow this, you'll automatically begin to feel really amazing.
The 32 mouthfuls, I've once been told it was 2 handfuls. Is that kind of a similar amount?
Yeah.
You think? Yeah. Okay.
So,
Just making sure. And
Yeah.
one question about the bathing, because we often hear and read about tongue scraping, oil massages, specific oils that we need also per dosha. Is there anything
Right.
that you would recommend in regards to the bathing or maybe the morning routine?
When you wake up in the morning, you can scrape your tongue. If you don't have a tongue scraper, you can use a spoon. So it's just picking up your tongue and scraping the ama, which are the toxins, off of the tongue. I think you're supposed to do it when you wake up before you brush your teeth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've gotten used to just brushing my teeth and then I'll like scrape my tongue. The oil massage is really great. In India, we do like a castor oil bath once a week. So castor oil is a really thick oil that I think in Spanish is called sino, which here in Peru you can only get it in the pharmacies. So it's it's quite difficult to wash off afterwards unless you have like a special soap. But it's really good to prevent hair loss. So you can like rub it into like your scalp and then you can take a shower. So if you don't have access to that oil, you can use sesame oil. Sesame oil is tridoshic. It's very good for any dosha, except for pitta in summer. If it's very hot, it can aggravate pitta. So pitta can just use coconut oil in that case. Receiving an Ayurvedic massage twice a month by someone or once a month, as much as you can. Great way to balance yourself. But self-massage, I used to do before bed. I used to do my scalp, my face, and all my joints with sesame oil. But I stopped doing that. I just feel like I'm good. But what I do is I have someone coming and they give me an Ayurvedic massage from, and I do before bed still put the sesame oil in my scalp. And I feel that is really helpful to,
Yes, I think that was one of the other questions as well. Can you do all of this yourself, or would you recommend seeing someone to help you out in the beginning?
Really depends on your budget, the time that you have, but it's really simple just to do at home. But I would recommend not to do it before bedtime, but to do it before you shower. So what you do is when you wake up in the morning, as soon as you wake up, put sesame oil on your face, on if you have sore joints, on your knees, on your wrists, on your scalp. And then while you're going to the bathroom, you can just leave it on, and then you take your shower, right? So it's okay to leave, because some people think that maybe the oil is still there. Like I wouldn't scrub it off with soap, because it's really good to have a slight oily tap from the oil on your skin. It's very good for the skin and especially for the joints. And because we're using sesame oil, this is something that you can ingest. So it's fine. It's very good for you.
Exactly. And you mentioned you can do this either in the morning, but also before bed, right? There's no set time necessarily, or better time to do this.
According to Ayurveda, it's supposed to be before you take your shower. This is, I think, what I understood. I think it's what I learned in India. I went to India 5 times, and every time that I've gone, I would go to the Ayurvedic shop, and I would buy like these special oils. And I think it was someone suggested to put it on before bed, and then when you wake up in the morning, to shower. Or maybe it was my teacher, Paramaguru Sharath, suggested to put on the oil, and then when you wake up in the morning, to shower. The problem with this is that you need to have like a strong immune system, because what the oil does is it takes heat out of the body. Okay? This is why I would suggest doing it before you shower in the beginning, and then you can increase the amount of time once you get used to it, and then eventually you can put it on before you go to sleep, because you might catch a cold or something if you put it on before bed, and then when you wake up in the morning, could catch a cold.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting fact you're mentioning. Is there anything else that you would like to mention?
No, it was just interesting when I was talking about like getting started. Like I said, waking up early, taking a shower, having breakfast early, having lunch early, having a small dinner, going to bed early. It really does balance your dosha. It makes you just feel awesome. And so because I'm Pitta, for example, I should be waking up at 5, but for the most part I wake up at 3:30 so that I can take class at 6 a.m. and I can practice beforehand. And so I found that I do need to take a small rest in the afternoon. Ayurveda does not recommend this at all, taking a nap or a rest, because it increases ama, which is your toxins. Unless you are pregnant or breastfeeding, or you are sick, or you are a child 5 years and under, you should actually take a nap. It's actually very good. Or if you are Vata doshas, I think they give you this exception that it's okay to take a small rest in the afternoon. So I find that what I've done is I've taken this rest in the afternoon because I feel like it helps me be able to continue with my day. I try not to fall asleep, but I will be on my left side, like completely aware and resting. So it's like a meditation, but lying down. If I do fall asleep, I do feel very heavy.
You often feel more tired after your nap than you felt before, right?
Right. Exactly.
I see Kate asked how she can identify her dosha or her type. So I've written a blog and there are some links to a dosha test. There's 2 different tests, one for the dosha that you get when you're born and one that you have right now. And these are by the Ayurvedic Institute. I would recommend those. I know there's loads of apps, there's loads of different tests online. What would you recommend, Laura?
You can download an application. There are loads of tests online. We have all 3, right? So the best is to do a couple of tests, see what the results are, and then read, not only about your dosha, but about other doshas. If we're only like reading about Ayurveda, it's not very helpful. It's helpful because we begin to understand, but the best way is to practice yoga, practice, and work with someone who has been practicing yoga for a long time, practice every day, and try to follow, like I said, this routine, and automatically you're going to balance your dosha, which is basically living in harmony with what is natural. So it's natural for the human being to rise with the sun, but if we want to make changes, this Brahma Muhurta, the God's hour, we need to make an effort. So we rise a little bit before the sun, an hour and a half before the sun rises, so we can practice yoga and meditation.
Exactly. If anyone else has any questions, maybe later on, feel free to send them in and we can try and reply. Where else can we find you? What have you got going on at the moment?
I teach online my yoga classes, Ashtanga Yoga classes. I also do asesoría de nutrición basada en Ayurveda. So I do help people with their diaria, with their Ayurvedic routine. I give Ayurvedic massage. I also do past life therapy. My Instagram is Ashtanga Yoga Peru, but I work with people from all over the world now that it is online. And I have a website, Ashtanga Yoga Peru also.
Really, really cool. So please check Laura out online. Check out the schedules. Maybe book a class. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Ha sido muy lindo ver muchos compañeros, ¿no? De yoga conectándose. Y gracias a ti, Annie, por invitarme.
No, gracias a ti, perdón. We've been speaking English the whole time. I've got all my Spanish.
Well, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and hopefully see you soon again.
Yes.
We'll stay in touch. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your wisdom.
Big hug and a kiss. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You listen to Your Yoga in English, brought to you by Enga Unite, a unique online learning platform for non-native English-speaking yogis and yoga teachers. If you feel inspired and liked what you learned today, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and follow us at Anga Unite and become a member of our online community, Your Yoga in English, on Facebook. Practice, rest, repeat, and all will come.